Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Reid. I'm the senior NFL writer at ESPN's The Undefeated, and I'd like to welcome you to the town hall today. This is an event that we're all very excited about. Social justice is something that's very important. It's something that's very important to Rise. It's important to the NFL. It's important to NFL players. And I can't think of a better venue than where we are, the city of Atlanta and the King Center, to have this town hall, to discuss these issues. And just a little bit about my background. I, about 3 years ago, went to the Undefeated, and during my time at the Undefeated, my focus has been covering race in the NFL. And as we all know, Colin Kaepernick started a discussion a couple of years ago, and the league has picked up on it, and players have picked up on it, and this is where we're at right now. And again, I'm just very excited to be here for this town hall, and we're gonna have three discussions, and the first one, you coming out? The first one will be with Paul Tagliabue, former NFL commissioner and co-chair Rise Board of Directors, and Diahann Billings-Burford, the CEO of Rise. Please give them a hand. Okay, for starters, Diahann, tell us what Rise is and what the objective is.
So thank you all for being here. Rise is a not-for-profit, and we have the goal of educating the sports community, empowering sports leaders, and on the issue of race and racism, all to make our country better. And so we work with athletes, executives, young, old, in the sports community to really get at what we think is one of the most pressing issues across our country.
Commissioner Tagliabue, you have had a huge role in shaping the Rooney Rule. A friend of mine, N. Jeremy Dura, wrote a book called Advancing the Ball, where he talked about the process that led to the Rooney Rule being implemented in the NFL. And that was because you saw a need for that, and you saw a need that wasn't being met. Can you talk a little bit about the Rooney Rule?
Yeah, the Rooney Rule, as most of you probably know, requires the teams to interview minority candidates when they're doing head coaching hires. The way I look at it, the Rooney Rule was the end point or the beginning point after a long process. Because I think that kind of a rule only is effective if there's a pool of talent and that the people who are doing the hiring can recognize that talent. So we worked for years on ensuring that the pool of talent was there and making sure that the owners and club presidents knew who the talent was. Simple thing we did. We had African-American assistant coaches and coordinators make presentations at league meetings so that they could see. People like Herman Edwards made presentations, and he told me later that the Jets hired him because of the presentation he made at a league meeting. So the Rooney Rule, I think, is just a piece of a much larger puzzle, and it's still being worked on.
Could you also talk a little bit about your decision, which was a controversial decision at the time, to, in 1990, take the 1993 Super Bowl away from Arizona because of their feelings about the MLK holiday?
Yeah, that was right after I became commissioner, and the league had, selecting Super Bowls. President Reagan had declared that the Martin Luther King holiday would be a national holiday. Many of the states, I think more than 45 of the 50 states, had similarly made the Martin Luther King holiday a state holiday. Arizona was one of those states that had not done that. And when the discussions about playing the Super Bowl in 1993, there was competition between Arizona, Pasadena, and I think one other city. It was made clear by the league, by the owners who were on the Super Bowl selection committee, that if the Arizona voters or the legislature did not adopt a Martin Luther King holiday, the Super Bowl that was being granted to Arizona would be withdrawn, and that's what happened. And shortly after that Super Bowl, sometimes called the Super Bowl that wasn't, it was played in Pasadena. Shortly after that, the voters in Arizona passed the King holiday, and they had a Super Bowl in 1996, I think it was.
So when we talk about all these ideas around social justice, you're an Ivy League educated young lady. I believe Yale.
God bless you. You call me young. Continue.
Well, if I remember correctly, it's Yale and Columbia Law.
Yes.
And you also are really uniquely positioned to be in the job you're in now because you've done it both in the private sector and you've done it in government. You work for the New York City Mayor's Office, I believe.
Yes, under Mayor Bloomberg.
When you look at where we're at in terms of social justice now, what can be done by individuals who aren't necessarily in sports? What can be done by people who just on a day-to-day basis to affect change?
Yeah. Well, you know, most of our work, even though I say we educate the sports community, we mean a much larger community. Our theme for everything we're doing at Super Bowl this year is Champions of Change. And so we actually think that everyone has the ability to be a champion of change. We think there are tons of things that people can do, and most of the work of RISE is focused on that. Most of the work of RISE, we're focused on working with young people on issues of identity, gender identity, and helping them get at this social justice issue in ways that make sense for them and their communities. One of our largest initiatives is Rise to Vote. I don't see one of our board members here, Jocelyn Vincent, she was very important to make building Rise to Vote. We think everyone can be a champion because everyone can be invested, everyone can be civically engaged, and voting is one way. I invite everybody here to go to our website and take a pledge to vote and get active. We think that recently, unfortunately, my daughter's school had a racially motivated incident, and it was the students that led the protest on Martin Luther King Day, decided everybody would dress in black, decided they would boycott classes, they would block classrooms, and the young people who had done the offensive thing, eventually they left the school, whether they were asked to leave or whether they decided has not really been disclosed. And so we think that everybody has the ability to be a champion of change. We also just acknowledge that sport is this wonderful place where, as humans, we tend to set aside differences to focus on a common goal. And so we really use that vehicle to get individuals to do that in a larger context as well.
Commissioner Tagliabue, as we move forward here with the social justice work that's being done in the NFL, I would imagine you take some pride in the fact that you had a big role in basically laying a foundation with your approach to the Rooney Rule. Is that fair to say?
Well, I think it's, goes a lot deeper than that. I was talking with someone earlier. I think that there was a generation of players who became acutely aware of Martin Luther King, the Civil Rights Movement, and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, among other things, the Voting Rights Act in 1965. So who were those players? Mel Blount with the Steelers, Herman Edwards, Kermit Alexander, John Mackey, Gene Upshaw. In conversations I've had with them, and they all turned out to be leaders in the NFL on issues of race and collective bargaining issues and equity for the players. That generation, I think, set a stage for the current generation. And the current generation, I think, has a unique opportunity because of what prior generations have done. The Rooney Rule is just a piece of that. And to me, the Rooney Rule is a lot less important than what those players did, representing all the players in collective bargaining on free agency issues. And it was a part of a generation of players in baseball. It was represented by Curt Flood. In basketball, it was Oscar Robertson and Bill Bradley. So it was not divided along racial lines, and it wasn't race issues as such, but it was issues of fairness. And that kind of mentality, I think, underlies what the players are doing today.
So it's fair to say you see the players today building on that legacy?
Yeah, I think it's clear that they built on that legacy. Before that Civil Rights Act and before that generation of players, the African American players were far more passive. As a society, we were far more passive. We accepted segregation when we shouldn't have accepted it. And many of those earlier players, like Willie Davis, came from Grambling. And so it was historically black colleges that was producing the players in the NFL. The next generation started coming from Big Ten schools, Pac-12 schools, and so on. John Mackey from Syracuse, Floyd Little, who we lost early because of his cancer. But that was a different generation of people who I think the current generation of players can learn something from them, and we all need to understand that we're standing on their shoulders.
And Diahann, with where we're at now, are you encouraged, or do you feel that we're at a place where a lot more can be done, so whether we're at a good place or a bad place, it's still a jumping off point to accomplish more?
I'm both. So I'm always encouraged. I'm always optimistic because, again, back to this concept of champions and change. You know, I feel like to some degree, the world is what we make it. It doesn't mean that we don't have obstacles. It doesn't mean that there are not superpowers in our way, but I'm always optimistic. I always believe that change can be made. And I also know it's not even a thought. I think one of the things that's interesting is we have conversations about whether we think there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done, and that's just factual, right? We have inequities in multiple ways and manifested in multiple ways across our country. And so, you know, for instance, I'm excited about this town hall, the next discussion coming, right? The criminal justice system has been called the new Jim Crow. We have inequity manifesting itself in many ways, and there's a lot to be done on many fronts. But I'm optimistic. I will jokingly say when I came on to this post, I work for two people that I think that, well, I work for a full board, but we joke, they call me young. They're older guys, they're white, they're straight, they are well off. And if we have people with all of those traits that are as woke as the two of them are, besides me just believing in me and those of us that have to fight some of these issues, knowing that there's a them, I think there's great cause to be optimistic.
And last one for Commissioner Tagliabue. Commissioner, the NFL, through its partnership with the Players Coalition, unprecedented partnership, a social justice deal that it struck, do professional sports leagues have a responsibility to do what the other professional sports leagues have a responsibility to do what the NFL has done? And is it beyond just the business aspect of it that, yes, these are businesses, but there's also right and wrong?
Well, I think that the professional sports leagues have an opportunity and a responsibility to reinvent themselves so that they can support players and others who want to be engaged on the social justice issues. That's one of the important pieces of RISE. It's not just the NFL. It's a coalition of all the professional sports leagues. It includes individual sports, tennis and golf. It includes NASCAR. It includes college sports. So it's a coalition that reaches the entire country, blue states, red states, urban areas, rural areas. And I think the leagues are in the process of reinventing themselves. The Players Coalition in the NFL is one example. What Adam Silver has done in the NBA is a different kind of example. But that's the responsibility. Does it have to mimic the Players Coalition? No. Does it have to mimic what the NBA is doing? No. There are lots of ideas out there, but sports leagues were not designed and built to provide social advocacy opportunities for players. Now they must do that in some way, shape, or form.
I said it was the last question, but Diahann, I got to follow up with you on that. So RISE needs these partnerships to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. We need them. We need the ones we have, and we need to grow the ones we have as well.
Well, that was a good answer, I think.
Thank you.
Well, that concludes this portion of our discussion. I'd like you guys to please give a hand for Diahann Billings-Burford and Commissioner Paul Tagliabue.
Thank you.
We have Dee Haslam from the Cleveland Browns. We have, I believe, we have Troy Vincent from the NFL. I think he's out here. And we also have Brian Banks, who's a former NFL player. Please give them all a hand. Okay, I'm going to start out with Troy because in my job with the Undefeated, I had to, well, not I had to, I wanted to cover the negotiations between the NFL and the Players Coalition. That was the main group that negotiated with the NFL on behalf of the players who protested during the national anthem. And Troy Vincent, he probably doesn't want to hear me say this, but that deal does not get done without him, because there were points in that process where things occurred that could have killed the deal, people could have walked away, and Commissioner Goodell, and he had a lot to do with it, but Troy, and I've had players tell me this, I've had people on the other side of the negotiating table tell me that Troy stopped that thing from blowing up at many points. And Troy, you know, you're in a unique position as well because you've been a player, you're now on the management side of the NFL. When you talk about how far this thing has come, and you and I have talked about this before, it really does blow you away that we could be at this point when you talk about where the NFL used to be in terms of play 60 and things like that.
Okay, we're just where we began, Jason, and when I came in as a player, the last thing I was thinking about was, and that was in '92, was social justice in its form today. I mean, obviously it was something that family grew up in, it was our normal reality every day. It was punt, pass, and kick, quite frankly. It was punt, pass, and kick, and doing many community activities with Mr. and Mrs. Tagliabue, with Habitat for Humanity, and then 25 years later, you know, we're talking about criminal justice reform. We're talking about bail and sentencing and police brutality. So it's the athlete today is much different, and just through that process, I was just so proud to see the young men take a stand, and they never wavered. It was ugly. I saw the best and the worst of people. So sitting in the room, listening, I saw the best and the worst of my colleagues. I saw the best and the worst of my brothers. And it was just, okay, who's going to be a voice of reason? Lord, I don't know where this thing is going, but I think we want the same thing. We just got to find that commonality on how we get there. So just to see where we began and where we are today, Dee, frankly, and Jimmy and others, once we got to a place where we can say, you know what, we have more in common, we want the same thing. And then being able to say, okay, what do we agree on? And what are those few issues that and the issues that we disagreed on, neither one of us, neither the player nor the owner liked it. It's, okay, what's the solution? And then focusing on a solution, and I think we came to a good partnership. People talk about a deal. No, this wasn't a deal. This was about humanity, and we had an opportunity as a sport. And we have to constantly remind folks that we're not a social justice organization. Never has been and never will be. These young men, as I dreamed about playing in the National Football League and playing a game on Sunday and Monday. I didn't want to take what I saw every day at home. Sunday and Mondays was a way that I can go out and play ball, and now see us play our part in this general crisis, dealing with these issues together. I'm proud of the owners. I'm proud of the commissioner. More importantly, I'm proud of the players for living and standing on their convictions.
Dee, from the perspective of an owner, what was it like as that process was unfolding? Because when we're talking about social justice, when we're talking about tackling something new, which had never been done before, you're going to have growing pains. For you, what was your view of it from the ownership perspective? Well,
I mean, shame on us, because it was the first time we actually had sat down with our players and just listened. It's just a huge step for us. We talked about football, but we never just talked to them about life. And once we started listening to the stories and listening to, the issues, it really opened our eyes, and it was a process that for us has been tremendous. And I think for a lot of the other owners, it's just that process of learning to listen to each other. I mean, we were able to exchange a dialogue and learn so much from each other, and it truly has been transformative for our organization, but I think for our community. I mean, we know so much more about the issues. In Ohio, there's over 50,000 prisoners. That's from 1978 when there was 15,000. Now there's 50,000, and the population in Ohio has not grown at that same rate. So when you start hearing those kind of conversations, you're like, we've got to wake up, we've got to get going, and there's a lot we can do. No, we're not a social justice, that's not our mission or our goal, but I think it's everybody's responsibility. I think it's an American issue, and it's everybody's responsibility to listen, to learn, and be involved.
Ricardo, you're actually a member of the Falcons Social Justice Committee. And Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, actually encouraged you guys to form this committee and go out there and educate yourselves and find out areas to basically attack. What was that process like?
At scary times, when things are going tough in the league, and like he said, we dream our whole lives of, making it to the NFL. So when you see that, like, if you say one bad thing or you do one bad thing, you may be, they try to rip you down, or they try to, take all your credibility and push it away and then just push you in the back. So to have Mr. Blank show us that, he's willing to, get in front with us, and he's never turned our back on us. And our GM, Scott Pioli, who, he pushed people to go to the Selma Walk. He pushed us to go and learn about the education. It was cool to actually see that they took the front, and they was actually the people who helped us, not be scared and not be, passive to stay away from what actually is going on. So it gave us, a chance. Like, they matched the donations that we were given to, build better houses and fix up the communities and stuff. And it makes people more comfortable once you have your owners and once you have the people who, actually like sign our checks, and take care of our families. Once you have those people, backing you, it's much easier than fighting against them.
There's so much going on right now with criminal justice reform, and there are examples every day of things that are wrong with the system. And Brian Banks is someone who I have a lot of respect for, because he was falsely accused of a crime. He took a plea deal because often in the criminal justice system, that's what happens. You're told to take a plea deal. If you're not wealthy, you don't have the lawyers to necessarily, string things out. And he took a plea deal even though he was innocent. And I don't know if let me say this. I would not be as gracious and as have the ability to be the type of person he is if that had happened to me. And Brian, I'd like you to talk about your experience, what you went through, and how in the criminal justice system there are stories like this every day.
Yeah, there are definitely stories like this every day. I think there are stories that don't get enough attention and they deserve it, but yes, there are stories like this every day. In a nutshell, I was 11th in the nation as a linebacker my senior year in high school. I went to a known makeout spot on my campus with a girl that I've known for a long time. We kissed and made out. Later that day, I was being accused of kidnapping and sexual assault. I lost 10 years of my life, football opportunities, everything. All for the young woman to come forward 10 years later and admit that everything was a lie. But I think that it speaks a little bit further beyond what put me in jail, but what puts many of us in jail. If you look at the statistics right now, 95 to 97% of all criminal cases in the United States ends in some form of a plea bargain. Every time you're watching Law and Order and they go to trial, that's only 3 to 5% of all criminal cases in the United States. Everybody else is taking a deal. Does that mean that 95 to 97% of people are guilty, or are they being feared into deals, exhausted into deals, tricked into deals? I experienced all three. African Americans make up somewhere around 16% of the US population, but we make up over 65% of our incarceration population in the United States.
And often what it really comes down to is two colors, green and black, many times, or green and brown. If you don't have the money to have the type of representation that can get you to a point where you can beat something, for lack of a better way to put it, oftentimes that deal is taken. That deal winds up in the prison industrial system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is a system, going beyond what happened to just Brian Banks. This is a system that you see these things happen often. And you have to ask yourself, not why are these things happening, but how did we get to this point to where these things are happening? And I think if you get to the root of it all, you understand how it's grown into what it's become today.
The First Step Act addresses prison reform and sentencing. And this is something that got bipartisan support. Both Republicans and Democrats felt that this was something that we needed. And I'm gonna just throw this out to everybody. With the amount of damage that has been done with sentencing guidelines over the years, is this enough? And is it gonna work quickly enough to really make a substantive change?
Well, I'll begin it. You have to start someplace. I think that is why it was a First Step Act. And many of the critics were criticizing it wasn't enough. Here, when you have law enforcement buy-in, because as citizens, you still want to know, okay, you're going to release all of these people, inmates, whatever you want to call, however you deem them. We still want to know that we're protected. So there was, okay, does it work? Having law enforcement support. I think as we see as men and women transition back into their communities, can they transition well? Many will be looking, will crime begin to increase? Are people safe? I think we have to monitor those things. I think everyone has to analyze. What's not enough? We have to, I think the First Step Act, the way it was written, what I've read and what I've been educated on, it was the first step. Let's analyze and let's see how we can move forward to see what else needs to be put inside of that lane.
I'm sorry, Ricardo, you want to say something?
I was gonna say, I don't think from all the years of backtrack, I don't think there is ever gonna be deemed enough. But I think, like you said, it is a starting point. It's just sad that we actually have to talk about this kind of stuff, and we actually have to go and fight for this stuff to be passed. But it's parts in this world that people are going to jail for things that are being in another part of the world it's totally legal. So it's just funny that we have to fight against that kind of stuff. It makes no sense, and it is a start, but it's a lot of cleaning up that has to happen.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and the whole thing is that the problems that we're talking about don't start when people get to be 20 and 21 years old. They start when people are young. And Dee, I know that for you and the Browns, education is very important in terms of getting people started on the right path. Can you talk a little bit about how education really is a key component in this whole thing that we're talking about trying to achieve a different level of social justice?
Sure. I mean, we believe that our education system greatly underserves our children. It's one of the biggest inequities in our country. Every child should have the right to go to a great school, and the parents should be able to choose where that child goes. And we work on that. We work a lot with some quality charter schools in the inner city of Cleveland. We work with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District to help them. But we also work a lot on just the social issue of why a child can't have a choice on going to a really good school. The tax dollar should follow that child. So we talk a lot about that because that's a game changer. If your child can go to any school and a great school, that will make all the difference, and that's the gap that's going to close. That's the beginning of a lot of the issues that we have. So yeah, we'd like to talk about that a lot. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Troy, I talked to Malcolm Jenkins and Anquan Bolden, the co-founders of the Players Coalition, and other athletes, other NFL players, a lot about this. A lot of times what they get is, well, stay in your lane. You know, your lane's a football player. Ricardo, I'm sure you've heard this as well. Your lane's a football player to stay as a football player. Now, Devin McCourty, who is going to play in the Super Bowl on Sunday, he's a safety with the New England Patriots, a Pro Bowl player. The thing he said to me very recently was, people talk about staying in your lane. I've gone to the Super Bowl. This is Devin saying, it's not me. I've gone to the Super Bowl many times with the Patriots. Last year, the Patriots won the Super Bowl. The Eagles won the Super Bowl. Malcolm Jenkins, Chris Long was a member of Players Coalition, Torrey Smith. So what Devin said to me is, all these people who talk about stay in your lane, that we can't perform at our jobs and also be socially conscious and be out in the communities doing work, the narrative is false because we're contributing to Super Bowl teams. Troy, for you, when you hear people talk about stay in your lane, does it anger you because it's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what the players are trying to do?
Yeah, it's a misconception. And frankly, it's the athlete who has to now think about himself as, you know, whether you're in basketball, football, baseball, the game is a byproduct of who you are. I'm a human being. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a nephew. We as athletes, we have to be able to, as I would say, deflect and build. You don't get into the rhetoric of going back and forth about what someone may say, hey, shut up, stay in your, the sport is a byproduct. The athleticism that we were all granted through the grace of God is a byproduct of who we are as human beings. We all have a responsibility, a collective responsibility to do better by mankind. And our platforms allow us to speak into things that typically those who cannot speak, that's our role, is to fight for that individuals, to be a voice for those individuals that come from our neighborhoods. Trenton, New Jersey, Mercer County, 08609. If you from that zip code, you know what life's about. If you come from Dolly Holmes or Wilbur section of Trenton, New Jersey, you know what life's about. When we, it doesn't matter whether we're an athlete or not, but I was a professional athlete. It was my responsibility to make sure that I talked about the educational system, police relations. There was no such thing as bail reform. We didn't know that. We just said, hey, you need 200, we need to get 400. Some uncle, can you bring 300 over here? And someone's running down to the bail bondsman. And then grandma said, we don't have enough, so she's putting her house up, the deed to her house, so that brother, father, uncle can get out of jail. So it was the way of life. Now having a better understanding. No, I expect every athlete. That's an expectation that we all should have of every athlete. You have the platform, inform yourself, but then you have to speak for the ones who can't speak for themselves.
Ricardo, but there are some guys, and I've, in traveling the country the last 3 years writing about the social justice movement in the NFL, there are some guys who have told me privately that that's not what they want to do. That, for the guys who are active and want to be out there, but there are some guys, and some of them feel like they've been put in a position where if you don't want to be involved with the things that Troy was negotiating, well, all of a sudden you're a bad guy. Is it incumbent upon all of the athletes to use that platform, or can you understand something like, I just want to go home with my family, or I just want to go do my own thing, I'm not really interested in that?
I'm a true believer in too much is given, much is expected. So when you're given this platform to impact, me personally, I'm not like a big social media guy. I'm not like, I don't like post all my stuff. I personally don't think it's genuine when you're going back to like affect or help your community that you got cameras around you every time to show everybody what you're doing. I think, even if you do it on a small level, even if you do it on a more quiet stage, you have to do something. It's something that has to be done. So if it's not just giving money, give some time. Go back and teach some kids, take them under your wing, text a couple people to check on them. Educate each other, it's like, it's a lot of people that, I hear that all the time, like that's not, my lane. Like I haven't ever been, beaten badly. I haven't never been, crossed. I've been searched a couple times. I've been pulled over a couple times wrongfully. I never had, really bad things happen to me, but I still feel like it's my job, it's my title, it's my, it's my life goal to just make the world a better place. And So if I feel like I can just, sit up there and think I'm cool and think I'm important because I'm an athlete, like you said, those are just God-given talents. I think everybody has a chance to impact and change a community and change people. So yes, I think it should be required.
So Jason, if I can comment on that. So one thing will happen when you hear that, and everybody has their own way about going about it. There will come a time where you will be reminded of exactly who you are. You're a black man in America.
Period.
Whether you're an athlete, no, I don't get down that way. No, reality will set in. You just don't know when. So whether that's going back and helping out with the schools, making sure the school that you've come from have certain things, it's not, if it will, it's going to occur where you will be reminded of exactly who you are in America. But don't lose the platform, because once you're done, you're done. You lose that circle of influence. You lose the media relationships. You lose the club relationships. You didn't say anything, you didn't want to take part while you had the platform, and now you're out of the game and you're looking for access. It's done. It's over. So as Rick says, much is given, much is required.
Understood. Dee, along those lines, based on my reporting, it's fair to say that this was a growing process for some of the owners too, that understanding what Troy was basically coming to them saying, hey, look, this is what's going on. And people maybe didn't have the life experiences to relate to some of those things. So there was a growing process among the owners too. Do you feel that owners are now at a point where they get it more? They get why this is so important?
Yes, I think it's a process. Seth Duval, who is a tight end for us, a really great young man, but he told me the story that before he went to college, he went to Princeton. Before he went there, he was never exposed to any diversity and never really thought about it. He goes to Princeton, and it totally changes his life, and it opens his eyes. He marries a woman of color, and together they work really hard now, working with youth, to expose them to justice issues. It's somewhat like the owners too. We think about football, right? It's, you have to win the game. And so we're more focused on that, but as I said, it's a learning process, and we're in a relationship with the players, and that relationship is really important. And so it's a learning process of learning what the players cared about and understanding where they're coming from, and for the players to understand that we have to work together and we have to learn from each other. So I think it's a process. I think we've come a long way. I think there's work to be done, and I think the owners are willing to do it.
Brian, you were greatly aided by the California Innocence Project, which is a group that gets people who have been wrongly convicted out of prison. We know what's being done at a lawmaker level right now, but there are still so many people who, because of sentencing guidelines, because of people who were wrongly accused, because of people who took deals that had the money to get out of the situation or to win cases, wouldn't have done it. How important is still the infrastructure to help people who are in that system now? Not necessarily the lawmakers and the laws, but groups like the California Innocence Project, because that's part of social justice too, because they're doing great work out there.
Absolutely. For those who don't know, the California Innocence Project is a student law firm clinic where young aspiring attorneys want to get their clinical hours out the way. They would join the Innocence Project to help exonerate people who have claimed that what they're in prison for is a crime that they didn't commit. It's definitely an organization that's needed. I'm going to hit you with another fact. One in every 3 African-American males will see some form of incarceration throughout their lifetime. So if you got 2 homeboys, one of y'all will go to jail. And it's sad that is an actual statistic. It's a number. Without organizations like the California Innocence Project or organizations throughout certain universities that help people appeal their cases, go back to court on a writ of habeas corpus or whatnot. Without those organizations, we are literally turning a blind eye to people who are potentially behind bars for something that they didn't do. There is no actual study on how many people are currently behind bars innocent, but they said that if you were to kind of put those numbers together, and if you focus on just 3 to 5% of those of people who are currently behind bars, they said there's somewhere around 60,000 people that could be potentially behind bars right now for something that they didn't do. So to answer your question, it's vital that we have organizations like the California Innocence Project. Moreover, it's important that we understand that those are nonprofit organizations that help these individuals, such as myself, free of charge. The only way that they're able to help free of charge is if it's from people such as us that are aware of their existence, and we give help financially, moral support, time, physical support, actually being involved in some type of donation or whatnot. But it's definitely important, because if it wasn't for them, I'd still be in the situation that I was in.
Yeah, and along those lines, we're talking about the we don't have a study to pinpoint the numbers of people who are actually innocent in jail, but we do know that because without bail reform, if there were bail reform, before now things are being worked on, there'd be a lot of people who wouldn't have been in jail. Although the only reason they had to be there is because they didn't have the money to be out awaiting trial.
Absolutely. That goes back to being exhausted or feared into taking a deal, such as my situation. I was a 16-year-old kid when I was arrested. They said that my case was so severe that I needed to be tried as an adult. I went from facing minor camp time to 41 years to life in prison at 16. They gave me a bail of over $1.15 million. My family, of course, we don't have that kind of money. Most families don't. So my mom sold her house. She sold her car to pay for the attorney to represent me in this situation. By that time, her pockets have been exhausted. Now I can't post bond. So now they sit you behind bars and they give you these continuances. Come back next week, we're not ready. Come back in a month, we're on vacation. Come back in 2 months, we need to talk about this. A year has gone by, you have not even had your chance in court yet. But now they come at you with this deal. You're tired, you're done. Your resources have been exhausted. You have no choice but to take a deal or walk into a courtroom where the odds are you won't walk out with your freedom, because you don't have the money to talk your way out of it. So this system is built more on resources and what you have versus truth. And I think when we look at our justice system, we have this image of a balancing scale, truth and justice, right and wrong. But right now, and for years, our system has been lopsided, where it's not about truth and justice or balance. It's about being tough on crime. And sometimes being tough on crime means you're putting the wrong person behind bars. That goes in a little bit further. We have now created this blanket system in our communities where we just want things to be safe. We don't care how it's done, we just want our communities to be safe. So we don't even ask, what is that young man in the back of that police car for? Why does he have those handcuffs on his arms for? We don't ask, how much time is he facing? Were those 30 years appropriate for the case that he just, for the crime he just been committed for? As long as our community is safe.
We're not asking the questions that need to be asked. How is this taking place?
Right.
Yeah.
What are the attempts of rehabilitation? Have we tried to rehabilitate the people that are causing this recidivism rate? I think we talked about that earlier. Whereas how do we feel about people coming out of prison and integrating back into communities? Well, if you're so concerned about these people, let's put some time and money and resources into rehabilitation. Do your part to rehabilitate the people that you're afraid of, so that you no longer have to worry about when they come home, what are they going to do, where they're going to live, how they're going to act, and so forth.
Jason, if I don't want to forget this thought as Dee was talking. I get asked the question all the time, what did I think was the factor in getting this relationship on its course? Frankly, it was the owners actually listening. And this is the one thing, the Players Coalition, when they put the listen and learn tours together. I used to travel with Jeffrey Lurie back in 1995 with the Eagles Youth Partnership, going around the city of Philadelphia, reading books. In 2016 and 17, I was in a courtroom during a court watch. And as men and women from the city of brotherly love was coming there and said, wait a minute, that cash bail of $150 or $300 and being there for a common traffic stop of taillight was out, been in jail for 30 days, going out to Seattle and you're watching, wait a minute, this young lady is been incarcerated for 30 days for stealing a light bulb from the Salvation Army. Are you kidding me? Yeah. And seeing the owners and the commissioner watch the men and women of all colors, the men and women who've served our country that may have some mental health issues, who don't know when it's the next time to come to court. You saw injustices. The owner saw injustice, so that they had a peek in our world, a peek in the world to say, you couldn't have the right heart and say, this was wrong, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be working to fix this with our players.
Yeah, understood. Dee, do you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, through the process of listening and learning, we took that listening and learning out into the community through a neighborhood summit that was smaller and a larger summit. So that information, the things that you're talking about, those are the kind of conversations that need to be had in every community. And so we kind of took it on as our responsibility. That's what we're going to do, is we're going to take it on as our responsibility to make sure that it's a dialogue and a conversation in our community, because a lot of people just don't know these facts, and it's real, and it's in our community, it's severe. So that's one way we feel like we can, if we can just educate our community that this is a problem, and the only way we're going to fix our neighborhoods is to shine the light on these issues.
You couldn't have said it any better. Every year, the Innocence Project has this network convention where they come together as a group and they discuss moving forward better tactics and techniques at helping clients. And I'm sitting here and I'm listening. And one of these years, I said, it's the information is great that we're all sharing with each other, but we're only sharing this information with the people who already know it. We need to get this information out to the people who don't know it, so we can continue to have these discussions amongst each other all day. And we go, yeah, I know that's right. But we could do that all day and nothing's going to change until we open up that door and bring other people into the fold and have people be inspired to want to join this
Expand the circle.
and expand the circle. The more we expand, each one teach one, teach one, each one. The more we expand, if I could take you and I can take you, your resources are here, your resources are here. And then we start to work together, and then these two, y'all bring one more person, and this thing expands more and more. Now this discussion can't be ignored, because we got the right people behind it, the discussion is up here, and we got everybody talking. Until then, it's just a discussion amongst a few people. Yeah. So it's important, like you said, Dee, we gotta open this up, because this information is gonna just be information for the few until we give it out to the many.
Ricardo, along those lines, you had talked about how hot it was at one point within the league with what was going on. As painful as that was, would you say it was worth it because it got to a point where it was so hot that it was either going to blow up or it was actually going to work because people were going to finally talk to each other about what's really going on here?
It's a funny thing when like friction just starts to happen. You start to get a little friction going and just a little flame, catch a little fire, man. People typically start to listen, man, and that's what will happen. I think that it was enough people and it was enough owners to start to listen and to start to even like I said, it helped like push the players out to go do more, and it also helped a lot of the people who were just talking to talk. Like you said, we can get around the table and we can talk all we want to, but now everybody has a chance. Everybody can open up their pocketbooks and everybody can give out a little time. And the people who really want to do it and want to help, they can do it. And I think the conversation was great. And I think the way things are going and the way that we're getting support and the way the teams and the NFL and the Rides community is backing us, I think a lot is going in the right direction. And they're giving us a chance to actually use our platform and use it in the right way and get people to listen. Because no matter how good you are, if you're good, bad, in the NFL, people listen to you. It doesn't matter. You got a platform.
You know, Troy, you touched on earlier that the NFL is not a social justice organization. That's not what the NFL's mission is, but the NFL is doing its part in this. But, you know, through my reporting, traveling the country, talking about what you and the Players Coalition did, there are a lot of people out there, Troy, and I know you're aware of this, who don't want the NFL doing this. They don't want NFL owners contributing to a social justice deal, which is going to put millions into doing things in communities. They don't want players talking about this. They don't want anything to do with something they feel has nothing to do with football. What do you say to those people?
They're living in, they're dinosaurs. They're not living in reality.
But you know they're out there, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's life. And we got to focus on the solutions. And the disruption was necessary. You know, like two brothers, you watch your two younger brothers fight, you know that, you just make sure they don't, you know when they get to that point where somebody's going to get hurt. But in this one, you watch them go back and forth. The disruption was necessary for us to get to this point to talk about, okay, how do we apply the owner's influence in legislation? How do we apply the influence of driving awareness? How do we use the media and our relationships to drive awareness? And then lastly, you heard, well, they shouldn't be taking anything. Well, you ain't getting nothing done without no money. Stop it. It's not going to happen in the backyard, us cooking and sharing. No.
But that was a criticism.
That was a criticism. But resources, legislative assistance, and then driving awareness in the media. That's where we landed.
I'm sorry?
Just logically thinking, what agreement or what, you know, if me and you have a relationship, would it work better if we're on the same team or if we just argue all the time?
Logically, no. It's better if you're in the same team.
That's why it helps us easier when we have the owners that backs us. It helps us easier. We can get to more people. It takes the time. And it just cuts down a lot of time. They help push us out there. We don't have to fight against them. It's better when they're on our sides. It's much easier.
The NFL is not a nonprofit. The NFL is a business, and it's the most spectacularly successful sports league on the planet. But owners are running these teams to make a profit. Can you, as an owner, can you understand how some of your fans just don't like all this talk?
I mean, I think the fans are really concerned about, they just want to watch a football game. And I do think it's our responsibility to deliver the product on the field. But the players are human beings that have hearts and minds, and they care. This is a generation of young men that care deeply about their communities, and they want to see change. And so I think the platform does allow them to do that. And they're out there working in the communities and talking to the police officers and involved with the kids, and it's the impact they can make is so tremendous. I think that the communities will see that, and I actually don't think most of our fans are critical of it. I think they want to make sure we focus on football, that's important, but I think they do recognize that these men have the ability to make change in a positive way. I mean, we're as a club, we're excited about that opportunity to walk with them to do that, both with dollars and time, and they're putting their dollars and time into it too. And we've seen the impact it can make in Cleveland, and we know that it's making an impact all around the country. It's really exciting.
Go ahead.
Because I'm just kind of going back and I'm sharing these things for the first time publicly. But which was unfortunate because you saw the player who was actually trying to work towards, okay, we get this together, we can do more for our communities. Now this guy was challenged in his own community of trying to prove his blackness. Like if you work with the owners, you're not really down with us.
You actually read my mind where I was just about to go.
You know, there's been books that's been, you know, talk about me trying to prove, I don't need to prove my blackness, you know, or try to validate where I come from or so on and so forth. And you also had the owner on the other side saying, why are you having these discussions with these guys? So the courage of the selected few on the owner side, because he and she was being challenged as well, like, where are you going with this thing? All of these things were like, that disruption was good, and you just actually saw that subset of owners, the courage, the fortitude, and then when they came together as one, it was powerful. And then it just flowed out to the general body of the membership to say, you know what? We got a great game. The players are the best in the world, and we can make a difference on this issue, as we've done on many others.
Brian, you made it to the NFL. I mean, you were robbed of a lot, but you did make it to the NFL. You made it to the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm curious in terms of your whole journey, as you look at where this thing is now, also being a former NFL player, where do you think the league is at this point in terms of trying to be a part of this whole discussion and a part of the solution?
I think with any group of people, organization, you're going to have some people who are going to be for the cause. You're going to have some people against the cause. I think what's important is defining what the cause is and how much and how valuable is it on an overall scale when it comes to bringing people together, making the game a greater game, and as well as addressing critical issues in our society that I feel need to be addressed. It'd be one thing if players weren't protesting. Then it'd be like, all right, the league will stay out of it. We'll play the game. We'll deliver and give people what they want. But you have a situation where players are speaking, and you have staff and facility workers that are also speaking as well. So now you have an issue within the football world and community that should be addressed. Just like if there was an overwhelming case of spousal abuse. If it started happening on a everyday basis, it would become a conversation. There would be a PowerPoint presentation that would go out to all the teams. There would be people going out to speak to players and they tell them how important it is. There may be some programs that may be developed or events that may be developed so that we could show how much we're trying to combat spousal abuse. But here we're talking about racial equality. We're talking about social justice. We're talking about reforming our system, and some people have problems with that because it's always worked for them. Here's an opportunity for you to do something for somebody else. Here's an opportunity for you to say, "I got mine. Now let me help you get yours." For those who don't want to conform to what's simply right, then we need to start thinking about getting those people out the way, if that's even possible. That's kind of, I don't know if that answers how I feel about where we are in the current state.
No, it does. I think it makes it pretty clear how you feel about that.
Respectfully for everybody.
Yes.
Everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
Absolutely.
Everybody's entitled to feel the
Absolutely.
way that they want to feel. But right is right and wrong is wrong. What side do you stand on? What's right or what's wrong? And if you stand for what's wrong, then you got something you need to look in the mirror about.
Or get out the way.
Or get out the way.
Yeah. Okay, so where are we at in 5 years? I know about the deal with the players coach in the NFL, and one thing, through my reporting, so often what I hear is about how so many of the players never thought that they would have a partner in the league in doing this, that they never envisioned that this discussion would actually turn into something tangible that was going to help. So we know right now that the spotlight is still on this situation. But where are we going to be at in 5 years? Are we going to have as many guys as active? I know that the deal will be continuing, that the teams will have their role, but what does this look like in 5 years? And are we in a better place in 5 years?
I think it's still going to be a lot of process. I think it's going to be things that we still need to work on, but I think the process is going to be better. I think because 5 years from now, it won't be as fresh. people won't be as scared to get out. Like I said, we won't be as passive to get out into the communities and help and actually, voice our opinion. I think there's better days to come. And I know for sure with myself and all the people and all the owners and all the people who are willing to help, I know that we won't stop.
Well, after a couple of Brown Super Bowl championships.
All right, here we go. Get that in there.
We'll have hopefully a bigger platform to really make a difference. But we're committed in Ohio to do some innovative things for change and also to continue the dialogue. And our players are committed, we're committed, and we're excited about the opportunity.
I think 5 years will allow us to see exactly those investments, those partners. What are the return? What were those? Did we go? Did we partner with the right people? Because some of these are, you're funding organizations who are boots on the ground, grassroots organizations in every local community. The support that has been provided, whether it's a club, league, legislatively, is it working?
No one has a crystal ball. You got to find out.
Is the policy working? Are we seeing more policy changes? So I think that 5-year window will allow us to see, are we headed, numbers will tell us, facts will tell us, are we seeing more policy changes?
Brian?
I think he just said it for me as well, and I just I'm a very straightforward speaker, right? I think for when you wanna invoke change, you want to change something, and you want a lot of people to get involved in that change. You want to make some good noise, right? You want to make some positive noise to let people know that you're working on what you're working on. And I think everything that the league right now is doing to attack social justice or social injustice, and to get involved with players in regards to some of the things that they're working on, I think it's great. Do the masses really know that right now? I don't think so. A good way to make noise and to let people know that they're working on some better changes. There's a player right now who's on the forefront of it all, who still doesn't have a job. I think that by hiring this particular player shows a really huge step forward in that we agree that there's some injustice, there's some inequalities, there's some things that can be fixed, and we're going to show you that we're down for the cause, starting with getting Cap a job.
So what will be nice in 5 years is to see the sports organizations working in alignment on this issue rather than against each other.
Because that still does happen. Yeah.
This is what the NBA players are doing. This is what the NFL players are doing. This is what baseball. When are we going to start? That's where I'm hoping that we'll rise, or an organization could get us all to collaboratively. Imagine what we can do if we start working together.
Well, okay, and in danger of being told we got to wrap this up because I know we're coming up against time. I gotta follow up real quick. Why has that not happened? I mean, what do you think is the main reason? Because if all the leagues collectively came together, how much more beneficial could it be?
The possibilities are there. We also compete against each other.
Right.
And we've allowed other people to allow us to compete against each other. Well, this is what they're doing. This is what you're not doing. This is why, this is the brilliance behind, the genesis behind RISE is an organization that could bring all of our sports organizations together. How do we get there? We can learn from one another what they're doing rather than saying, okay, they can wear t-shirts and you can't. Right. They're using this hashtag and you guys are doing that. You're not getting nothing done with that. Yeah. Yeah. Someone needs to bring us all to the table, which RISE has done, all of the commissioners, all of the media partners, the athletes, and work towards the mission. Stay disciplined in the mission, we can get something done.
Because everybody's pretty clear on what the mission needs to be, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, I'm a reporter, so I could ask questions all day long, but we have come to the end of this portion. Please thank this incredible panel, because this was just outstanding, okay?
told him, don't ask me any hard questions.
No hard questions, no hard questions. I actually have to start off by saying my daughter told me to tell you hello.
Tell her I said hi.
She greatly admires you, and so I had to start off by doing this because I think she's watching because we're live streaming this, so I can't just tell her I did it and I didn't actually do it because she would know. Where are we at right now in terms of social justice in this country, in your opinion?
You know, this is going to sound strange, but I think we're at a good place. And the reason I say that is because when a generation of young people, through the Black Lives Matter movement, decided to take it to the streets now, although there's some ways in which some of them operated that I didn't necessarily agree with, I think holistically they helped to raise the consciousness that we're not in a post-racial America because we elected an African-American president.
But we did hear that a lot previously. People did think that we were in a post-racial place.
Exactly, and I got a lot of questions from the media at that time when President Obama was elected. Is this the fulfillment of your father's dream? And I said, my father did not sacrifice for an individual. He sacrificed for groups of people to elevate, at that time, first and foremost, the Negro community or the Black community, but all marginalized communities. And so it wasn't about getting someone elected. And it's a good step, as we said about the criminal justice reform, the first step, but certainly not where we need to be as America. And so I think we're in a good place because people are being forced. And it's good because Daddy said, we must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or together we'll be forced to live as fools. So we're being forced to learn how to live together so we don't perish, be forced to perish as fools. So all of these conversations, you know, what Colin did was necessary. You know, it's up to us now. And when I say us, I mean all of us have a responsibility to do our part in our lane. You know, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Now, we all do our work in various ways, but I think as one person said earlier, we have a responsibility to our humanity, to advance it, to improve it, to progress it. Although some people may choose to be in their self-centered world, at the end of the day, my father challenged us to understand globally our interconnectedness. And he said it like this: we're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. And what affects one directly affects all indirectly. And I can't be all that out being to you all that you all be. And so right now, there are people who can't be who they ought to be in our society. And too many people took a tranquilizer and slept for 50 years and didn't realize that things were not over after Dr. King. The few things that occurred legislatively is not the end. That we've got to begin to push people to change the way they see individuals. The biggest problem today is a lot of this implicit bias that's expressing itself, that's caught up in our systems. White supremacy that's traveled down from slavery, and what happened as a result of the young people rising up. Now, those who've been privileged are having to get a little bit uncomfortable, and it's a necessary uncomfortableness because, you know, for us to be truly great as a nation, we have to have equity. And everything that we're seeing is saying, wait a minute, there's not any equity in this country.
Right, because if there's not that belief that we are part of the American dream, that we can achieve, that we are included in what the greatness and promise of America can be, then there's no hope. I mean, is that fair?
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you think your father would be right now about, in terms of looking at this nation right now, today? Would he be optimistic still?
Well, you know, my father, I say my father was a realist. Some people say he was an optimist, and then during his latter stages, they said he became more pessimistic. I think my father was always a realist, and part of his gifting, he was a prophet, so he saw things in the future. He spoke things into the future. That's why people can relate to his words today, and they're still alive. And it's like he's right here with us. When you listen to some of his words or read, like for instance, his last book, Where Do You Go From Here? Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos of Community. He would not be shocked or surprised about now, because he predicted this. He told us in '67 there was a necessary shift that we needed to make as a society, that we needed to become more of a thing-oriented society, a people-oriented society rather than a thing-oriented society, because he said we're rapidly becoming more of that. And had we made those shifts where people would be at the center, that means you're concerned about the dignity, worth, and value of an individual. We wouldn't be experiencing all of the stuff we experience in the realm of social justice, in the realm of economics, because that's a big issue. You know, while we're gathered here in Atlanta, that's done a pretty decent job as it relates to race relations. We've done a poor job as it relates to the racial wealth gap. We have one of the worst in the nation. And so he would still be pushing us. When my father was assassinated, he was working on a poor people's campaign. He was working on economic equity. And he would still be working on that as we speak today.
Last thing, King Center is celebrating 51 years, I believe. Mm-hmm. What do the next 50 years of the King Center look like?
Well, you know, we are spending most of our time trying to educate and train people in my father's philosophy and methodology of nonviolence. He was the most effective leader for social change, in my personal opinion, in the world. That's why over 100 nations celebrate his birthday. That's why if you visit the Nobel Museum, they tell you that out of all of the Nobel laureates, whether it's literature, medicine, science, Nobel Peace Prize, 1 million visitors to their website a day, over 50% of those come looking for Dr. King. And so it is important that we begin to learn about his philosophy and methodology of nonviolence, which we call Nonviolence 365, because it's more than a tactic you use in a social justice movement. It's a way of thinking about humanity. It's a way of acting in humanity where you value the dignity and worth of a person. So even when you're at odds with an individual, you still value their personhood, and you attack a cause, or you attack an issue and not them. You try to keep them with dignity. And so we educate and train people in the philosophy, methodology, principles, and the steps of nonviolence. That's why when you come on our property, you see those. So that must be done. We had to shift and try to make that our predominant focus, and everything comes out of that, because we're continuing to go around in a circle right now, because every time something happens, we get on different sides. You know, someone said just in the past panel, they said we can do more together. They were talking about the owners and the players. If we're all fighting each other, we can't accomplish much. And so this philosophy helps us maybe to have differences of opinion, but know how to find that common ground and move forward as a family, because we're part of a human family, whether we like it or not.
Wow. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, again, Dr. Bernice King.
Thank you.
I might have been a little premature in that, actually, because we're still setting up. Okay. I could do like a comedy routine to give it a little more time or something. No, I better not do that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Thank you.
We're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we wanted to end the evening by thanking everyone for coming. We hope that we provided a good conversation. We think, obviously, these issues of social justice, I love how Brian said it, or social injustice, and our ability to come together and address race, racial discrimination, social injustice. We hope that we took advantage of this week to highlight that and to have everybody think about that and everyone think about how you can be involved. Now, on a purely fun note, because we are about using sport to do this, let's not get confused. We love sport. One of the things that RISE has been able to do, we're constantly trying to leverage resources in this space, is we've been able to secure tickets to the Super Bowl, and we give them away to members of the community that we believe really are champions of change. They are getting at this work every day. And so I'd like to announce our winners. So we have one coach, Coach Ernest Davis. You here? Please come forward. Thank you. Wow, you're really here. He is the head football coach and science teacher at Brown Middle School. So thank you, Coach Davis. Stay. We have Jamie Moore. Thank you. Woo. Jamie is a senior at Heritage High School. We have Officer Maurice Moore from the Atlanta Police Department. And we have Jared Sawyer Jr., who is a senior at Morehouse. So I just want to thank you guys for doing all the work you do all the time. And we're so excited at RISE to be able to share this resource. This is a wonderful event, even though I personally am thinking Atlanta might get a little crazy and I might need to head home to New York before the game starts. It is a wonderful event and we hope that you really enjoy it. I will say I wouldn't be much of a CEO, and I think I'm pretty good, if I did not say RISE does lots of things, but we need constant support. We need champions. Your support looks different. I ask you to take some time, either go to our website, risetowin.org, follow us on Instagram, Rise to Win, or Twitter. Some of y'all are older like me. We are on Facebook, even though my staff keeps trying to play me about that. Whatever. But I ask you to learn more about what we do so that we can continue to do these great things. But I would like to, if we could really just give a round of applause for these champions of change. And we are going to end with a video. Can I let everybody go now? After the video. They can't leave till after the video.
He exudes in beating the odds. He doubled the scores in science within 1 year.
Officer Moore, he is the champion.
Science within 1 year.
Officer Moore, he is the champion of change. He's a servant. In his boxing, he was training the kids earlier. Some of them want to quit and give up. He's like, no, just keep pushing through it.
It's about giving appreciation to everybody who puts in work every single day, regardless of the background.
And knowing that what I'm doing is making a difference wholesomely.
Have you ever been to a Super Bowl before?
Haven't. No, I haven't.
No.
I've never been to a Super Bowl before.
Because I have some fantastic news for you, sir. You're going to the Super Bowl.